Ken had always been the level-headed one, at least. That's what fans believed. But when the cameras rolled during the latest episode of Love and Marriage, Huntsville Season 7, viewers were left gasping at what unfolded. It all began innocently enough. A backyard barbecue. A few laughs, the smell of grilled ribs in the air, and the cast trying to maintain a fragile peace after weeks of tension. But it only took one conversation, just one subtle comment, for everything to spiral out of control. Ken, with his arms crossed and jaw tight, had been observing Marques from across the yard all evening. There was a barely contained storm brewing behind his eyes. And when Marques made a casual remark about how the kids seemed to be more stable when they were with him, it was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Ken didn't even blink before marching across the patio, his voice booming through the yard. "Don't you ever talk about my parenting like that again, Marques." The crowd froze. Glasses clinked, forks paused midair, and even the background music seemed to die out for a moment. "Oh, so now you care?" Marques shot back, his tone cold and calculated. "Because from what I've seen, the only thing consistent about you is your absence." The moment those words left his mouth, Ken's entire demeanor shifted. His hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but from the flood of raw emotion threatening to break through the dam. "Say that again," Ken dared, stepping closer. "I dare you." Marques didn't flinch. "I said your kids see more of me than they do of you. That's not shade. That's a fact." All hell broke loose. Kimmy, trying to play peacemaker, rushed in between them, hands outstretched. "Both of you, stop this. This isn't the time or the place." But her voice was drowned by the growing tension. Fans watching the scene unfold online said it felt like a volcano erupting in real time. Ken's voice cracked as he shouted, "I've bent over backwards to be there for my kids, while you just play the part for cameras." The truth? That line cut deep, because Marques had been accused before of putting on a perfect dad persona for social media while allegedly not pulling the same weight behind closed doors. And that's when Letitia, who had been sipping her drink quietly in the background, finally spoke up loud enough for everyone to hear. "Y'all acting like y'all care about the kids, but all I see are two grown men fighting for ego, not love." Dead silence. The kind that made fans on Twitter instantly go wild, with #LAMChaos trending within minutes. Ken's voice lowered, almost like a growl. "This isn't about ego. This is about a man thinking he can step into my role just because I didn't post every bedtime story on Instagram. That's rich." Marques laughed bitterly. "You weren't around when Madison had her surgery, or when she made honor roll, or when Elijah had that panic attack and needed someone to talk to. I was there. Me." At that, Ken's face collapsed into something even more painful than anger, shame. A fleeting moment of guilt flickered through his eyes, but pride wouldn't let him fold. "You don't know what I was going through back then," he muttered, voice quieter now, yet still heavy with hurt. "I didn't abandon them. I was struggling." "Then you should have said that," Marques replied, his tone no longer venomous, but disappointed. "Because when you go silent, kids think it's them that did something wrong. I just didn't want them growing up with that pain." It was the first moment of real vulnerability between the two men. But even that thread of potential understanding was short-lived. Martel, clearly enjoying the drama but pretending to be above it, smirked from a corner table and whispered just loud enough, "Ain't it wild how people remember their struggles after someone else steps up?" That was it. Ken lunged, not violently, but with that same "I'm about to snap" energy that made producers and security scramble into frame. "You got something to say too, Martel?" he growled, eyes locked on him. Martel, never one to back down from adding fuel to the fire, stood up with a smug grin. "Just saying, maybe next time, show up before someone else replaces you." And with that, the night took another turn. Ken turned to Marques one final time. "You want to be their hero? Fine, but don't ever disrespect the man who gave them life. Then act like it," Marques snapped, before walking away and leaving Ken standing there alone, angry, broken, and spiraling. Tiffany later told the producers during a confessional, "You could see it on Ken's face. He wasn't just mad. He was hurting. And hurt people, they either heal or they burn everything down." Part 1 ends here. with the camera zooming in on Ken's trembling hands and clenched jaw as he tries to hold himself together in front of a divided backyard crowd and even more divided family. Ken stood there frozen, fists clenched, chest heaving, eyes darting back and forth like he was looking for an escape from the emotional ambush that just unfolded. The quiet buzz of a summer night was replaced by awkward silence and stunned faces. No one dared to breathe too loudly as Ken tried to collect himself, but his pride was visibly cracking. Behind him, the barbecue coals sizzled, forgotten, just like the intentions of peace that once defined this gathering. Destiny shifted uncomfortably in her seat, whispering to Stormy, "I ain't never seen Ken like that. Not ever." Stormy nodded slowly. That man's on the edge, and she wasn't wrong. Ken's carefully managed composure, the one he wore for the public, for the cameras, even for his kids, had finally unraveled. And it unraveled in front of Marques, the one person he had sworn to never give that satisfaction. What hurt the most wasn't just the accusations. It was that deep down, Ken knew parts of it were true. He had missed moments. He had let the silence speak louder than apologies. But what Marques didn't know, and what Ken had never shared, was the private war he had been fighting, one that had nothing to do with parenting and everything to do with survival. But in that moment, none of that mattered. Not to Marques, not to the cast, not even to the kids who would eventually hear about this secondhand from someone who caught the drama live. Just as Ken was about to walk away, hoping to bury the moment with a silent retreat, he heard footsteps behind him. It was Melody. "Don't let him bait you like that," she said quietly, almost motherly. "You know who you are, and you know what you've done for those kids." Ken didn't respond, but he didn't move either. Melody stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "Look at me," she said firmly. "You're not a bad father. But this silence, this distance, it's not helping." And tonight, Marques just exposed a wound that's been bleeding way too long. Ken exhaled, a bitter laugh escaping him. "He's raising my kids," he whispered, eyes glossed over, "while I'm out here trying to just get my mind right." Melody placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then tell them that. They deserve to hear it from you, not from a scene like this." Meanwhile, across the yard, Marques paced furiously near the garden wall, venting to Maurice, who had pulled him aside. "I didn't even come here to start anything," Marques barked, "but I can't keep sitting back while he shows up when it's convenient and expects praise for that." Maurice, ever the voice of legal logic and common sense, tried to intervene. "I get it, bro, I do. But don't confuse pain with neglect. Ken's not trying to steal your place, he's trying to reclaim his own. And that ain't easy for a man who's been lost for a minute." Marques's jaw twitched. "Then he needs to stop blaming everyone else and face the music. I ain't gonna sugarcoat it anymore. I'm not the enemy here. I just stepped in when someone had to." In the shadows, the producers whispered to each other. "We didn't plan for this," one muttered, adjusting the mic levels. "Yeah, but we're definitely keeping all of it," the other replied. This is the episode. Back at the center of the storm, Letitia tried to salvage what remained of the evening. She gently tapped a glass with her spoon, a soft ding-ding-ding echoing into the tense atmosphere. "Y'all, can we please not do this tonight?" This was supposed to be a family moment, but it was too late. The wounds had been ripped open, and no toast or prayer was going to stitch them shut in that moment. Kimmy, standing off to the side with tears welling in her eyes, finally broke. "You think you're hurting each other," she said, voice trembling. "It's the kids who'll carry this forever." Everyone turned to her. Her voice cracked as she continued. "You want to protect them? Then stop fighting in front of them. Stop using them as weapons. Just stop." The weight of her words hung in the air. Even Martel, usually smug and sarcastic, looked away uncomfortably. The emotional wreckage was real now. This wasn't about who posted more pictures or who showed up to more school plays. This was about two men, both shattered in different ways, trying to stand in the same space without crushing each other. But instead of healing, all they did was collide. And the shockwaves of that collision were now being felt by everyone around them. Later that night, as people began clearing out, the mood somber and hushed, Ken sat alone on a garden bench. His phone buzzed. A text from Madison. "Daddy, are you okay? Uncle Mark said you were sad." Ken stared at the screen for a long time, blinking away the tears that burned at the edge of his eyes. He wanted to reply. He wanted to say, "Yes, I'm okay." But he knew that would be a lie. So instead he typed, "I miss you. I'm working on being better. I promise." Meanwhile, inside the house, Marques sat with Martel, sipping water and reflecting. "I didn't want it to go down like that," he muttered. "But you know what? Maybe it needed to." Martel raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because you didn't just draw a line in the sand. You burned the bridge." Marques sighed. "Maybe. But if that's what it takes to get Ken to wake up, then maybe it's worth it." And just then, a producer quietly entered the room and informed them, "Episode's going to air with everything. No cuts. Public's gonna see the real raw truth." Martel chuckled. "Well, guess it's about to get real messy." But Marques wasn't smiling anymore. He was staring out the window at Ken, still alone, still broken. Because in spite of the tension, the truth was this wasn't about hatred. It was about two men who both loved the same children and didn't know how to share that love without stepping on each other's throats. Part 2 picks up exactly here, as daylight breaks on the aftermath of an unforgettable night and the consequences begin to unfold not just for Ken and Marques but for every single person caught in the emotional blast radius. The sun rose slowly over Huntsville, casting a soft orange glow across the now quiet backyard where last night's chaos had unfolded. The remains of the barbecue still lingered, the scent of smoke, the discarded paper plates, the overturned chair no one had bothered to fix. But it wasn't the mess outside that mirrored the real destruction, it was the emotional wreckage left behind in everyone's hearts. Inside his modest home, Ken stood by the window, staring blankly at his reflection. The text from Madison still echoed in his mind. "Daddy, are you okay?" He hadn't slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Marques' face, heard Martel's smug remark, and worst of all, remembered Kimmy's trembling voice reminding them all that this war had innocent casualties. The guilt weighed on him like wet cement. He picked up his phone a dozen times through the night, tempted to call Madison or even Marques, but each time, pride held him back. Or maybe it was fear. Fear that what Marques said was true. That maybe, just maybe, he had lost his place. Meanwhile, across town, Marques sat in his kitchen, exhausted but defiant. He had just finished making breakfast for the kids when Elijah asked innocently, "Are you and Uncle Ken mad at each other?" Marques knelt beside him, brushing a hand over the boy's curls. "Nah, kiddo. Grown-ups just forget how to talk sometimes." Elijah looked unconvinced. "Mom says you shouldn't yell in front of people you love." That one line hit Marques like a truck. He looked down, suddenly unable to meet his nephew's eyes. "She's right," he said quietly. "We messed up." Later that day, Tiffany gathered with Kimmy and Letitia at the boutique, the tension still thick between them. "I don't know what shocked me more," Tiffany began, arms crossed, Ken's outburst or Marques' audacity. "Honestly," Letitia responded, "I think they both said things they needed to say, but that wasn't the place. Not in front of us. Not like that." Kimmy sipped her tea, her voice low and steady. "We watched two men break right in front of us, and we all stood there with our mouths open, too stunned to do anything about it." Tiffany leaned forward. "So what now? Is anyone gonna step in and fix this, or are we just going to pretend it never happened?" Kimmy's eyes narrowed. "No, we're not pretending, because the kids are watching, and they deserve better than adults who can't handle their feelings." Without burning bridges, that afternoon, producers reached out to both Ken and Marques, offering to facilitate a sit-down for the next shoot. "No drama," they promised. "Just a chance to talk." Ken refused at first. "I ain't sitting down with him until he admits he crossed a line." But as the silence stretched into days, and the pressure from fans grew louder online, Ken found himself cracking. Social media was ablaze with divided opinions. Team Ken vs. Team Marques was trending. Viewers were dissecting every moment, every expression, every syllable from the argument. Some called Marques a hero for stepping up. Others defended Ken, citing mental health and personal trauma. A few blamed both, calling them selfish and immature. One fan tweet stood out and went viral. "It's not about who's the better man, it's about who's willing to grow. The kids need growth, not ego." That tweet haunted Ken, because deep down, He knew he hadn't been growing. He'd been frozen in place, paralyzed by past mistakes, haunted by failure, and too proud to ask for help. The next morning, he picked up his phone and called the producers. "Set the meeting. I'm ready to talk." They arranged a sit-down at a neutral location, a small rented loft set up for filming. Minimalist in design, quiet, with cameras hidden discreetly. When Ken walked in, Marques was already seated on the gray couch, arms folded, posture stiff. Ken didn't sit immediately. He stood there for a moment, eyes locked on Marques, heart racing. "I didn't come here to fight," he began. "Good," Marques said flatly. "Neither did I." Ken finally sat down, shoulders tense. There was a pause, a long one, where neither man spoke. Then finally, Ken broke the silence. "You hurt me. What you said, that I wasn't there, that I was just playing dad for the cameras. That cut deep." Marques looked away, jaw clenched. "It wasn't about hurting you. It was about speaking truth. Maybe I didn't say it the right way, but that's how I felt. I felt like I was cleaning up your mess." Ken nodded slowly. "And maybe I was hiding behind silence because I didn't want people to see me broken. I wasn't okay, Marques. For a long time. Depression, guilt, failure. I was drowning, and I didn't know how to ask for a life jacket." That admission stunned Marques. His expression softened slightly. "You should have told me," he said. "I thought you were just being selfish." "I know," Ken replied. "I let you think that. And I let my kids think that too. That's on me." They sat in silence for a moment before Marques added, "I didn't step in to take your place, Ken. I stepped in because I didn't want them to feel abandoned. And I'm grateful," Ken said, voice cracking. "But don't freeze me out in the process. Let me be their father again." At that moment, something shifted. The ice between them began to thaw. "Then be there," Marques said softly. "Not just physically. Be there, consistently, emotionally. Show up even when it's hard." Ken nodded. "I will. No more disappearing. No more pride walls." The producers watching from behind the camera wiped away tears. This wasn't the scene they had expected, but it was the one that mattered. Outside, the world still didn't know what had just taken place. But soon, the episode would air and fans would see two broken men trying to stitch something whole. Again, part 3 continues directly from this emotional turning point, where healing begins but not without new challenges, unexpected sabotage, and a shocking revelation that threatens to undo everything they've just repaired. Just as the tension between Ken and Marques seemed to ease, just as the slightest thread of reconciliation had been woven between two battered hearts, a storm was quietly gathering outside the frame. Healing is never linear, and in the world of love and marriage, peace is always fragile. Within hours of the emotional sit-down being filmed, the producers began editing clips for a teaser. But before any official promo went out, something unexpected leaked. A private clip, raw, unedited, capturing a moment where Ken had quietly confessed, "Sometimes I wonder if they'd be better off without me." That footage was never supposed to air, but somehow it did. The moment it hit social media, it spread like wildfire. Blogs ran with it. Podcasts dissected it. Fans speculated endlessly. Some called it a cry for help. Others accused the network of exploiting mental health for ratings. And amid the chaos, Ken found himself reeling, once more vulnerable, exposed, and betrayed. Marques was the first to call him. "I didn't leak that, man. I swear to you, I believe you." Ken replied, hollowly, "But it doesn't matter. It's out. And now my kids are going to see it." Without context, the pain in his voice was unmistakable. And Marques knew this wasn't about pride anymore. This was about survival. Meanwhile, Stormy and Letitia met at the spa, catching up on the scandal. "This is getting ugly," Stormy muttered. Ken looked like he was finally trying. "And now this. It's cruel." Letitia nodded, tapping through the trending tags. "Fans are calling him unstable, saying maybe Marques should have full custody." "That's foul," Stormy snapped. "Everyone wants a redemption arc until they actually see someone in the struggle. Then suddenly they forget all that talk about healing, as if things weren't already unraveling." Mardell saw an opportunity to stir the pot again. On his IG Live, he smirked at the camera and said, "Funny how everyone's praising Ken now, but just a few months ago he wasn't even showing up. Y'all love a good sob story until it hits too close to home." Comments poured in instantly, some agreeing, others furious. But Martel, ever the master of controlled chaos, knew exactly what he was doing, redirecting attention back to himself and setting the stage for more drama. Back at Ken's place, the fallout was hitting hard. Madison's school had called to inform him she'd gotten into a fight with another student who teased her about the viral clip. She kept saying her daddy's not broken, the teacher had said gently over the phone. She's protective of you. That call shattered Ken. He sat alone in the hallway afterward, head in his hands, sobbing quietly as the weight of everything fatherhood, failure, fame crashed down on him, all at once. Just then, there was a knock on the door. It was Melody. "You okay?" she asked softly. Ken couldn't speak at first. He just nodded, tears still clinging to his lashes. "You don't have to talk," she said, sitting beside him. "I just wanted you to know you're not alone." That moment of quiet solidarity was powerful. No cameras, no lights, just two people sitting in shared pain. Later that night, Marques called again. This time, his voice was different, urgent. "We need to take control of this narrative," he said. "The show's not gonna protect you, but maybe we can." Ken was confused. "What do you mean? A press conference? Or an interview? Something raw, something real. We tell the full story together." "You'd do that? After everything?" Ken asked, stunned. "You're still their father, man," Marques replied. "And whether I like it or not, our names are tied together now. I'm not gonna let the world tear you down over one moment." That unexpected offer reignited something in Ken hope. The next day, the two sat down with a local journalist, known for integrity, not gossip. The interview was raw, filled with tears, laughter, and revelations. Ken talked about his struggle with depression, his feelings of inadequacy, and his desperate desire to be present for his kids. Marques spoke of the difficulty of stepping into another man's shoes without crossing boundaries and the guilt he sometimes felt for doing so. The journalist ended the segment with a quote that would resonate across fan pages for weeks. "Two men, bound by love for the same children, finding strength not in dominance but in unity." The episode aired days later, but this time, something shifted. The backlash slowed, the hate cooled, and instead, comments poured in from fans sharing their own stories, thanking both men for showing what real growth looked like. But just when it felt like the storm had passed, a new complication emerged. At the next filming session, Tiffany pulled Marques aside. "There's something you need to know," she whispered. "Ken's ex is filing for full custody again. She saw the clip too, and she's using it." Marques' face fell. "What?" "She thinks the viral moment proves emotional instability. She's building a case. That bombshell would threaten to unravel all the progress they'd made." But instead of retreating, Ken stepped forward. "Then let's go to court. And this time, I'll show up. Every day, every appointment, every hearing." "You sure you're ready for that?" Tiffany asked. "Because this fight won't be about just the cameras. This is real now." Ken's voice didn't waver. "I wasn't ready before, but I am now." And just like that, the real war began, not between Ken and Marques, but between Ken and his past. Part 4 continues from here, diving into the courtroom drama, last-minute betrayals, unexpected allies, and one final twist that could either redeem Ken forever or break him beyond repair. Courtroom lights are different from camera lights. They don't flatter, don't hide imperfections, and don't care about ratings. As Ken stood in the hallway outside family court, dressed in a plain black suit with a slightly wrinkled tie, he looked less like a reality TV figure and more like a man who was finally ready to fight, not with fists or fiery words, but with presence, with proof that he was done running. Beside him stood Marques, quietly supportive, arms folded, nodding as if to say, "You've got this." The alliance that just weeks ago seemed impossible was now the very thing keeping Ken from falling apart. Inside, Ken's ex, Mariah, sat with her attorney, expression unreadable. She had seen the viral footage, she had read the thousands of comments, and she had built her case around one single sentence: "Sometimes I wonder if they'd be better off without me." That line, stripped of context, became the centerpiece of her argument. "Your Honor," her lawyer began, We're not questioning Mr. Ken's love for his children. We're questioning his emotional stability, his ability to provide a consistent, secure environment. Ken's attorney, a calm but fierce woman named Camille, stood and responded with equal clarity. Your Honor, a man admitting emotional struggle isn't a weakness. It's growth. And we have documented evidence of therapy sessions, co-parenting, courses, and consistent contact with the children since the incident. He's not running anymore. He's showing up. The judge listened carefully, eyes sharp but not unkind. As the day wore on, testimonies were called. Melody took the stand and spoke from the heart. Ken made mistakes. He shut down when things got too hard. But I've never seen anyone fight this hard to come back from that. Not for cameras, but for his kids. Marques was next. The courtroom buzzed slightly. His testimony would be the most watched. I stepped in when Ken stepped away, he said, hands folded. But he's not stepping away anymore. And no matter what differences we've had, I can say honestly those kids love him. They need him. And he's earned this chance. Mariah's eyes flickered, maybe anger, maybe disbelief. But she remained silent. The courtroom was tense as the judge called for a brief recess. Ken stepped outside and took a long breath. It was the first time in years that he didn't feel like disappearing. Meanwhile, in the producer's office, debates were raging. Do we air the courtroom footage? One asked. Too sensitive, said another. It's real life now, not just a show. But the executive producer saw gold. This is redemption, raw and unfiltered. Audiences will connect with it. Because it's no longer just drama, it's transformation. Still, Marques put his foot down. If you air it, you show everything: his wins, his work, his fight. Not just the sound bites that make him look weak. And for once, they agreed. Back in court, the judge returned and asked Ken if he had anything to say before the decision. Ken stood slowly, voice steady. I won't pretend I haven't failed. I have, but I never stopped loving my kids. And I never stopped wanting to be better for them. I'm not here to erase the past. I'm here to build a future, whatever it takes. The judge's decision wasn't a full win, but it wasn't a loss either. Shared custody, supervised at first, gradual increases, a clear plan for therapy, structured, monitored, but hopeful. It was a beginning. Outside, reporters swarmed, fans gathered, and through all the noise, Ken stood tall, his kids running into his arms as soon as he stepped off the court steps. Madison hugged him tightly and whispered, I knew you'd come back. In that moment, none of the cameras, tweets, or old mistakes mattered. Redemption wasn't a headline. It was a little girl's quiet belief. The next episode aired 2 weeks later. It opened not with drama, but with Ken sitting at his daughter's recital, clapping proudly, eyes misty. Marques was there too, filming from the side, capturing the moment for Ken without being in the way. Fans wept. This is why we watch, one commented. Not for the fights, but for the growth. Yet, as always in reality TV, peace doesn't last forever. In the final seconds of the episode, a teaser clip played. Martel in a dark hallway, whispering into his phone. Ken thinks Marques is his ally. Man, he doesn't even know the half of it. Fade to black. Viewers exploded. Was Marques hiding something? Was the truce a lie? Or was Martel playing puppet master again? And just like that, the next storm loomed. But for now, in this moment, Ken had something more powerful than followers or footage. He had hope. He had a second chance. And he wasn't letting it slip through his fingers this time. The screen faded to black after Martel's ominous whisper. And within seconds, social media was ablaze again. Ken thinks Marques is his ally? Man, he doesn't even know the half of it. That single line dropped like a bomb on the fandom. Forums ignited. YouTube reactors scrambled to upload instant breakdowns. And inside Ken's home, where peace had only just begun to settle, unease began creeping back in. Ken sat on the couch, arms folded, remote in hand but eyes distant. Madison and Elijah were upstairs, finally asleep. But his mind was spinning. What didn't he know? The comment had been too calculated, too specific to be casual drama bait. Martel always had a reason for stirring chaos, and that reason was rarely petty. Marques, on the other hand, hadn't said a word. Not to Ken. Not publicly. And that silence was deafening. 2 days later, Ken showed up unannounced at Marques' place. Not with anger yet, but with eyes searching for the truth. "Top 2. Me," he said, standing in the doorway, barely able to breathe. Marques stepped aside, motioning him in. "You saw the clip?" "Of course I did. Everyone did," Ken replied. "So what's he talking about?" Marques hesitated. He looked tired. "Guilty, even. I didn't want it to come out like this," he began, "because I didn't know how to say it without wrecking what we've built." "Say what?" Ken snapped. "Marques, what is it?" Marques sighed. "Last year, when things were really bad for you, when you went dark and weren't responding to anyone, I filed for emergency guardianship." Ken blinked. "You what?" "It was temporary. I didn't go through with it." Marques rushed to explain. "It was just paperwork. I never served you, but it's on record." And Martel got wind of it. "He's twisting it to make it look like I planned to take your kids." Ken took a step back. Betrayal flickered across his face. "You said you weren't trying to replace me." "I wasn't," Marques said quietly. "I was trying to protect them. They were scared. They were asking questions, crying at night. I didn't know where you were. None of us did. I panicked." Ken's voice cracked. "So instead of calling me one more time, instead of coming to find me, you filed to take them?" "I didn't take them, Ken," Marques said firmly. "I raised the alarm, but I stopped it the second I knew you were okay." "You hid it," Ken whispered. "You let me look at you like a brother, and you hid it." The room was quiet for a long time. Then Ken walked out. No yelling, no threats, just silence, cold and brutal. That night, Ken returned home to find Martel waiting in his driveway, leaning casually against his car like a villain straight out of a soap opera. "Told you he wasn't your boy," Martel said smugly. Ken didn't even blink. "You never cared about the kids. You just wanted the spotlight back on you." Martel chuckled. "Truth is truth. I just helped it surface." "And now what?" Ken said. "You think this makes you look strong? You're standing on pieces of people's lives just to be relevant. Better than pretending to heal when you still bleed every time someone looks too close," Martel replied, hitting below the belt once again. Ken didn't flinch this time. "You should try being human, Martel. There's strength in that too." As Martel drove off, viewers were left with one undeniable fact. The alliance was shattered. Again, Ken returned inside and sat in the dark, trying to process everything. His phone buzzed. It was Marques. One text. "I'm sorry. I was scared. I shouldn't have hidden it." Ken stared at the screen. He didn't reply. Not yet. The next episode picked up with the fallout. Melody, Kimmy, and Letitia gathered for brunch and dissected every angle. "Marques was wrong," Kimmy said, "but I get why he did it." "Intentions don't erase the consequences," Melody snapped. Ken trusted him. "That kind of betrayal cuts deep," Letitia added. "I just hope this doesn't send Ken spiraling again. He barely climbed out the last time." But it did hit Ken hard, harder than anyone expected. Because the betrayal didn't just remind him of the custody battle, it reopened wounds about abandonment, fear, and being unseen even by those closest to him. A week passed. Then, too, Ken didn't show up to filming. Rumors flew. Some said he quit the show. Others claimed he checked into a rehab center. The network stayed silent. Until one day, a live video went up on Ken's Instagram. No filter, no edits. Just Ken in a hoodie, sitting in his car. "I've been gone for a bit," he began. "Not because I'm hiding, but because I'm healing." Again, he paused, swallowing emotion. When someone close to you lies, even if it's for what they think is a good reason, it messes with your head. Makes you wonder if you'll ever be enough for anybody to just tell you the truth. His voice cracked slightly. "I'm not perfect. I never claimed to be, but I'm still trying. And my kids, they're the only reason I keep showing up. So if you're waiting for me to fall again, you might be waiting a long time." Fans flooded the comments. Supportive, emotional, proud. But nothing was more surprising than the next person to go live. Marques. "I messed up," he said to the camera. "I made a choice out of fear, not out of malice. But it cost me a friend, and that's on me." Then he added, "Ken, if you're watching, I meant it when I said I never wanted to replace you. But I get why it feels that way now. I'm sorry." Still, Ken didn't respond. Not publicly. Not yet. The season finale was approaching. The cast gathered for a final scene, an outdoor charity event for families dealing with mental health and single parenting. Everyone showed, except Ken, until the last minute. He arrived quietly, dressed casually, no fanfare. He walked up to Marques. For a long moment, they just stared. Then Ken spoke. "You lied, and it broke me, but I'm not letting it keep me broken." Marques nodded slowly. "So, where do we go from here?" Ken exhaled. "We rebuild, but not for the cameras, for the kids." And just like that, without hugs or dramatic music, they both walked into the event side by side. The camera lingered as they greeted families, signed posters, handed out backpacks. Two flawed men, one fragile truce, and a final line from Ken. In the confessional, growth isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up even when it hurts. The screen faded out, not with drama, but with something far more powerful: redemption. Now ready for your call to action when you are. And just like that, what started as a fiery, no-holds-barred blow-up between two men on love and marriage, Huntsville Season 7 turned into one of the most emotionally raw, real, and redemptive arcs the franchise has ever seen. Ken and Marques, once caught in a bitter war of words, bruised egos, and painful pasts, managed to confront their demons, face their truths, and begin a journey not just toward forgiveness, but toward co-parenting with purpose. But let's be real, this isn't some fairy tale ending. This is reality TV, where one whispered sentence can shatter alliances, where old wounds resurface just when you think they've healed, and where the line between loyalty and betrayal is razor thin. Martel's mysterious meddling still hangs in the air like a storm cloud. What did he really know? Was his whisper just a spark or a warning of something bigger coming in Season 8? And even though Ken and Marques took those first steps toward unity, can that fragile piece really hold when trust has already been broken once before? Fans are already buzzing with theories, shipping forgiveness arcs, and analyzing every frame of that final scene. Some believe Marques is still hiding something. Others think Ken has finally emerged as the true heart of the show. But now, we want to hear from you. Whose side were you really on? Ken fighting his way back from the edge? Or Marques stepping up when no one else would? Was Martel just being messy, or was he exposing a truth nobody else had the guts to say? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it shook you like it shook us, and subscribe for more explosive breakdowns, cast updates, and behind-the-scenes drama you won't see anywhere else. Because in Huntsville, the drama is never done.